This is Tabletop Magic, and today I'm going to do a deck tech on Jund. If you are already someone who plays Jund, or you've been playing it for a little while, this is probably not the video for you. This is going to be more just kind of going over the deck if you don't understand it, or maybe it's something you're thinking about getting into. But it's a really solid deck. If you're not really familiar with Jund, or you're just getting into Modern, or it's just not something that you see at maybe your F&Ms, and you're planning on going to a larger event, and you want to see what decks are out there, this is probably more of the video for you. But let's go ahead and get into it. Jund is a mid-range deck in Modern. It's also a Legacy deck, but this specific deck tech is for Modern. It's kind of a value-based deck. It revolves around a lot of one-for-ones and grinding out card advantage over a period of time while still putting down pressure. And it has a lot of interactions, and it's really a solid deck. It has some of the best numbers in the game. Probably not as good as Junk does in terms of matchups, but it has really good matchups against most decks out there. But it has some really bad matchups. Um, the really bad ones are like red green Tron or green red Tron. Those it's a really bad matchup because it's just a really fair deck that's super uh, value based out of big dumb creatures that sometimes Jund can't get around in time, and it requires a lot of 2 and 3 for 1s that take care of things. That's one of the bad matchups. Burn is okay. I have trouble with it sometimes, but then other times you just race it out and it's almost like it's not a game. Um, Grixis is a tougher matchup. It's probably Grixis out of the two between the two decks. Grixis is probably the better red-black deck, if that makes sense. Um, but this has a lot of really great matchups along the rest of the field aside from that, just for what it has and the value that it can grind out. Let's go ahead and just get into it. The first creature up would be Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf just being the most efficient beater in the game. As a 2-drop, it often comes down as a 3/4, which is ahead of its curve. And generally by the time it starts swinging, it's up, 4/5 and bigger. I just played it last night, and I think I played it on like turn 3, and it was like a 5/6 when I swung the next turn, just out of things going to the graveyard, which was pretty impressive. It doesn't generally get that big. A lot of times it sets around a 4/5, but to be so efficient as a beater, only costing 2, and it's very splashable. It doesn't really hurt your colors um, for a lot of other decks that play him. But in this deck, he's the most efficient beater where you just want to lay down pressure and then you start going to town with your removal and your discard that's either already started to happen or it's happening after and around. Just such an efficient card. The next one up is Dark Confidant. Dark Confidant just being so good at grinding out card advantage. When the deck is full of lots of 1/1s, um, being able to grind out that card advantage is really awesome. If he sticks around, a lot of times he just takes over the game by you always having extra cards. Yeah, the life hurts, but I'd say a lot of the time, and your odds are probably you know pretty good that you're going to hit something really low. If you do hit something, you hit a lot of lands off of him, but the curve is pretty low, so he just grinds out card advantage over and over and over. And if he sticks, a lot of times he just takes over the game by the amount of cards that you draw when you start getting into your removal, your discard, and your creatures and everything else that really just makes the Jund game plan work. And I've died to him before, and it happens, but it's one of the risks of the game. It's also when you got to know when sometimes you'll lightning bolt your own Dark Confidant, which happens, but I've been there, and I've also flipped, Tasigur off of him, which is horrible. And Tasigur seems horrible, but he's so good. But he's horrible, but he's so good. So, but Dark Confidant is just one of the best cards in the game. and it really just it grinds out that card advantage that a deck that's full of lots of 1-for-1s really needs. Up next is Scavenging Ooze. Scavenging Ooze, as a 2-drop, it's I don't I don't like to play him on curve, just depending on what I'm playing against. There's a lot of removal just for how good he is when he comes down out of the turn 2 curve. Um, when you get him down, and a lot of times you can just drop him on like turn 4 and have 2 open green and just start gaining life and putting pressure down. Um, he's really fills in some of the later game. Um, and it just depends on what you're playing against. If I'm playing against like Storm, I'll jam him down turn 2 every time I can, just because I need to start eating the graveyard and making things really their longer game really bad. Because Storm's one of those decks that can sandbag out for a long time and just have the their combo, which is just a critical mass. But if like you're playing against you know like some of the other decks like Grixis, um, it depends on how the game flow is going. If you want to really jam them down early or late, just for if you want to try to take out spells that could be relevant to like Snapcaster, or if you're trying to thin it out, so if they do play like a Tasker, you know, it's it's hit or miss. It's how you feel the game is playing for matchups like that. But against aggro, you might want to wait because he's so good against aggro because he plays so much removal. You might want to wait until they play their path or two, or before you jam them down, and then just start eating everything you've been killing, and then he gets really out of hand. He's also good against like the collected company that play like similar to like the Malera pot combos. It's really great there, especially when they're trying to jam like Kitchen Finks. You can eat Kitchen Finks with his ability on a stack, and he stops him coming back. Next up, we'll just go ahead and go to Tasigur. Tasigur he's so good, but it's like a love hate sometimes with Tasigur. And just because he's a 6-drop and the with Bob, kind of there's that love hate there, which, but he's just so good when he comes out as a 4/5 for 1. And Jund really starts to get ahead when it starts playing 2 spells a turn, or a spell and holding up removal, to push a threat. And that's another reason why Goyf is really good is you can, on like a turn 4 Goyf, you know, for him being so low costed, you can play him and still hold up removal or something to kill their chump blocker at the end of their turn before you start swinging it. Well, Tasker's similar, where he comes down as a 4/5 for 1, and he gets that advantage right there. His reoccurring ability is really great. You can really grind out a lot of advantage. You just need to pay attention to what you're delving out of your graveyard, and don't make the mistake of, oh, these lands are worthless, and you delve 5 lands out of your graveyard or 5 lands and some junk. You really need to try to consider what you want to get back off of his ability. I call it spinning the Tasigur wheel. So it's one of the things you got to pay attention to. And I made the mistake. I think the second time I ever played him, I was just like, yeah, I'm slamming down this guy, and he's big. And I just wasn't even thinking. I was like, oh, well, long, grindy game. I really don't want that Thoughtseize back. I got a Thoughtseize back. That's not cool. And so it's just one of those things you got to pay attention to, what you're taking out and what you really want to be able to get back if you get his ability to go off. Next up, with the value plan, we're going to talk about Huntmaster. And Huntmaster, if you're not really familiar with the deck, he doesn't sound like he does a whole lot, but as a 4-drop, he creates 2 creatures and he gains you some life. Well, he is 2 creatures. You have him and the wolf, and you get the advantage out of that and the life gain. But he really puts pressure down for them to play things maybe when they don't want to, or maybe when it's not the best time for them to do it. It's just one of those things that they do, that he forces them into sometimes. Um, and when he does flip, he is a beast when he flips back and forth, because I'll play him and maybe they'll play something out of turn. Well, then I'll pass my next turn without playing anything. I may avoid playing something just to flip him and to get that extra advantage out when his other ability goes on. The Ravager, he is, when it flips back and forth, and you just grind that advantage out. And I've done it before where he's flipped and flipped and flipped, and you just keep making your tokens. You do the damage, and you start pinging off things. Like when you get affinity on the kind of on the top deck, because this deck is a lot of removal. When you start getting decks like affinity, because I'll leave them in against affinity. Some people may not, but when they're like top decking, they may not be able to, when he comes down on turn 4, they may not be able to do anything about him just because he keeps flipping, and he creates the advantage of destroying something. That's probably a bad example using affinity, but when he flips back and forth, it's really, really awesome. Just the advantage that he grinds out, and this is a very grindy deck. We'll go and get to Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt it's just great. It's efficient, is really what it comes down to. It is 3 damage for 1 instant, and you can do it whenever you want. You either use it as removal, you can, I've use it to kill planeswalkers, removal, force damage, really put a clock on somebody, let them know that, hey, I'm really putting damage down, or I'm putting pressure down, and I'm going to force this damage in there. And it's just so efficient, and it's really one of the best cards in the game. Maybe not so much vintage game, but it's incredible in Legacy, Modern, if it was ever back in Standard, any of those formats, the Eternal formats, kind of, but Modern, which is not an Eternal format, it's a non-rotating constructed format. But anyways, it's really great. And then we'll go to one of the bread and butter cards that I like to think of for this deck that really makes the deck great is Abrupt Decay. Abrupt Decay, it is awesome. It is the answer that Wizards, I think this is the answer that Wizards wanted to put out there to make fair decks, make unfair decks, play fair Magic. And it's not the end-all to end-all. And it's not great in a lot of matchups. It's not great against, maybe like the Grixis Control. It's not great there because it doesn't kill Tasigur, it doesn't really kill anything. Maybe something, but nothing important that you really care about. Mid-range is a little different because it still kills Jace and stuff like that. But it's really, really good. It's the answer. It's the I'm not gonna let Twin try to push me around. I'm gonna kill whatever he's doing. I play 3. And it's not always the answer for some people that they want, where they want to see 3. A lot of people play 2. I play 3 just because I am a magnet for Twin. Whenever I go to a larger event, I am the magnet for Twin. I don't know what happens, but I can't avoid Twin 3 out of 4 rounds. Or I'm saying, like, I'll play it 3 out of 4 rounds. I don't know why it happens, but it does. But being able to answer so many cards and some of the best cards, and they can't stop it, it's just so good. There are times where it sets in my hand, and I'm kind of like, I really hate you, Manland, and I can't do anything about it. I really hate you, Abrupt Decay. But it's just so good. It forces people to play some fairer Magic with a lot of things where you don't want them to play fairer Magic, or where you want them to play and they don't, but it's what the deck does. Up next is Maelstrom Pulse. I play a single Maelstrom Pulse. Some people play two. I guess if I was gonna cut like a Abrupt Decay for Maelstrom Pulse, but Maelstrom Pulse is just really good. Just to be able to destroy anything you really want, permanence wise, non-land permanents. But a lot of times you can get that two or three or more for one, and especially against tokens is actually a really bad matchup for Jund, which it's not a very expensive deck. I don't think it's a very good deck, but it's not a very good matchup for Jund. This deck in particular, but that's just one of those random off the wall matches where it's great. But it does a lot of killing for a lot of weird things, and it's just really good. It's efficient, and it's what the deck wants is efficiency and lots of removal. Uh, Terminate. Terminate is probably my favorite card in the format. It's everywhere right now. Anything that's playing black red is playing Terminate somewhere, either in the somewhere in the 75, either in the main or the side. But Terminate is just such a great card, especially like the Grixis matchup, and I think it's one of the cards that makes the Grixis matchup so bad. Is it's not that bad, but it's not great. Is where they can just go Terminate, snap Terminate, and they just do it over and over. And I don't want to see 6 Terminates in a match. I just don't. And I somehow do whenever I play Grixis against it. So, but I really think it's one of the better cards in the format at the moment because there's a lot of fair decks that Terminate um, really punishes, and there's a lot of like in the aggro decks out there. But Terminate is just such a great card, and it can be regenerated is often relevant, but you know not always, but it happens. Kolaghan's Command. I'm playing two. You don't have to play two. A lot of people are playing one, but it's to be able to get that 2-for-1 off of a single card without any real tricks in the deck is one of those things that's really, really valuable. And a lot of the times, it could be, 2 damage and I'll return a card. Well, that gets me back, my Goyf or my Ooze or my Bob to start, grinding out advantage, Taskers, all that. It just to bring it all back. You don't play a lot of creatures. You play about 14 generally is the number, but I'm playing 2, so um, it's it's just grinds out the games. It makes Affinity a much better matchup, which it's already a good matchup, but to be able to destroy a creature plus destroy their cranial plating off one card, grind that 2-for-1 out while they're generally probably on top decks after turn 3. There's also like those bums out there that are playing Lantern Control, and when I say bum, I'm talking to Fritz, bum. But anyways, uh, Kolaghan's Command, it helps there. But it's an all-around great card, and all the modes are relevant. I've forced them to discard on their draw after they drew, get them on the ropes, grind out advantage. But it's just such a great card. It may be better in Grixis, but it's a really great card in Jund. I did play around with an idea using some other stuff to try to make Kolaghan's Command a little better. I actually pulled out some oozes and I put in some Eternal Witnesses, and I was trying to play like an Eternal Command that way. But oozes just seem to be better. I might go back to the idea and try to redo it in a different way. But it just grinds out all that advantage. Next is your discard package. I'm playing 4 Inquisition of Kozilek, and it's really what the deck does. It just follows that. Instead of waiting till it's a threat or waiting till they're trying to answer something, you take it then and now. And it's not great in the really grindy matchups where you play like the Jund mirror match or in Grixis. And I've left them all in before just to kind of throw a loop. But generally, like with those grinding matchups, it's not something you want to draw into. But it's it's just so good against the real control matchups, and where you're trying to force like a threat through. You can Inquisition them, especially if like I always smile when I see one in my opening hand, Inquisition or the Thoughtseize we're going to get to, just to be able to take those cards out. And there really shouldn't be a whole lot of explanation. I've probably gone into too much already for why they're good, but just to pick things out of their hand and get that information and know what you're going to play is just invaluable. Then you have Thoughtseize. Not my particular art that I favor, but um, it's the same, just wider. I only play two. Sometimes people play three. Sometimes people play 3 and 3 for the between the two Inquisitions and the Thoughtseize. But it's Thoughtseize. You know, even if you play standard, you know how good it is. Next is Liliana of the Veil. Liliana that's my homegirl. She really just grinds out that advantage. If you can land her on that turn 3 and you have an open field or you have like a threat down and you just start plussing her and plussing her, she just takes over games. Her -2, the Edict on it, is just so good because a lot of times there's not a lot of times or a lot of decks that really grind out more creatures than you will, and to be able to Edict is just good. And her ultimate, her -6, is so good. Just separating piles, and there's sometimes it's not great. I have I have I have separated people's piles. I've been under a Blood Moon lock. I separated people's piles before, and I gave them a chance of the Blood Moon or a land, or their lands, all of them. And they've taken Blood Moon, and it was a long game for that one. I've ultimated her against, you know, in almost any deck you can really think of, and she's just so good when she gets that ultimate down. You just start separating it, and you know what you want him to take. You kind of got to sweeten the pot a little bit to make him take something, which you once you get a feel for like what are you want to when you ultimate or you want to be like I want them to take this pile because I'm going to give them a little more in there, but I'm not going to give them what they actually want to keep. What's causing your dilemma at the moment. Sometimes you could just even separate their colors off their lands and cut them off of a color. But she's just so good. She takes over games. Mana base, pretty simple. 4 Verdants. They fetch out all your colors along with your basic lands, since you generally don't play a basic mountain because it really doesn't do anything for you. But you can be able to pull your basic lands. You can pull out any of your 3 fetches. Bloodstained Mire, same idea. It's just color fixing, and that's what fetches are about. They're not about. I don't know what weirdos get this in their head about the whole deck thing, but it's really about color fixing and to get the colors that you need in a 3-color deck for your turn 1, 2, and 3 to make sure you get the colors so you can get on that double green or all that green that you need for Scavenging Ooze, but you still need to be on double black to get out Liliana on time, and you can kind of fetch around those problems. But Bloodstained Mire, obvious. Wooded Foothills. I only play a single Wooded Foothills, and I play 3 Bloodstained Mires. If I went to probably like a 4th basic land, and I put in a 4th forest, I'd probably go to 2 and 2 between those guys. Some people play a 9th fetch. I'm only playing 8. Some people play a 9th fetch. I cut a 9th fetch, and I'm playing a Ghost Quarter, but we'll get to that. Overgrown Tomb. I'm playing a single Overgrown Tomb. Some people play an extra one, and they'll cut maybe one of their fast lands or something, but I'm only playing a single one. Same thing with my Blood Crypt, just a single Blood Crypt, and a single Stomping Ground. None of the arts in here or anything or any particular arts, all of mine are actually the original Dissension and Ravnica foil. ones because I like them. But you know, and those are your shocks that can come down. Up next is Twilight Mire. When I wasn't playing it. I played at States, and I did really, really well at States. I actually placed second at States, and I wasn't playing Twilight Mire. I wasn't. Um, uh, I was actually playing a slightly different list than I'm showing now. But instead of playing Twilight Mire, I was really, really expecting a lot of affinity. It was a big deck up until that point when I went through Modern States this last fall. So I went with was it Gavin Carnes or it's the red black one. I played that instead because I wasn't so worried about Ooze and getting the double black or sorry the double green for him. What I was really wanting to get into was I wanted the I was playing Olivia Voldaren in the main, and that was my 4-drop, and then there was Tasigur. And I wanted the extra red for her. I always felt whenever she came down, always felt like I was short on red to be able to use her ability a lot in a single turn. And I also wanted the double red and the double black so I could early turns out of the sideboard. I was playing Anger of the Gods and Damnation, and I wanted to be able to just to edge it a little bit, so I would make sure that I had that double red and I make sure I had that double black for those cards. And I've kind of gone back to it because I stopped playing Olivia. I haven't been seeing as much affinity recently, and it's not that it's not in your local meta; it could be there, but I just haven't been seeing a lot of it recently, personally. So I went back to this, and it's been fine for me. It's pretty much the same. I get the extra green for Ooze, which is good, but that's just where I'm at. And speaking of fast lands, earlier, well, this is Blackcleave Cliffs, and it's kind of my go-to #1 land to play first turn because either representing Lightning Bolt or you want to represent your Inquisition, or well, not represent, but play your Inquisition without it hurting you, or you still want to be able to be a little flexible on your colors coming up. Raging Ravine is my best friend. I probably win a third or a fourth of my games through Raging Ravines, just beating people to death, because the value plan of the deck really, you kind of just fight. You fight down things really, really hard. And the deck just grinding things out, and it just destroy this, discard this, and whatnot. And then you kind of get to this point where it's like, okay, I drew a card. Is it relevant? No. What do I do? And we've been going back and forth. Well, Raging Ravines, they're there, and they get around a lot of removal, and they're creatures when you want them to be. And he is a mana sink. He basically costs 5 to activate because you need him untapped also. But just being able to beat someone down with something that's huge is really awesome. And he gets so big, and he just beats things down. He's just awesome. I am playing a single. I'm playing 3 of the Ragings, but I'm playing a single Treetop, and I may go to another Raging over Treetop. It hasn't been great to me recently, but Treetop just being so aggressive where you only need to pay 2 to make him, and he has that trample that gets over, their little chump blockers, but he's really aggressive, and I like him, but I may go back to 4 Ragings and cut the Treetop altogether. The Treetop's honestly been really good to me, so it's kind of a toss-up. I could, and not a lot of people play a single one, but I like him. It's just me personally. Next, I have my Ghost Quarter. I'm playing a single Ghost Quarter just as a utility. Kind of kills off manlands. Tron is such a bad matchup. I don't even want to say that this is in there for that, but it's a really good utility land. If I was gonna cut it, I'd probably put in a basic forest and go with 4 basics. Blood Moon's not horrible, but it can, because Blood Moon catches people off guard, and it's what the card does. So, but I have used Ghost Quarter multiple times when I'm hurt on colors to Ghost Quarter my own land and to fetch out one of my basics using Ghost Quarter, which is really bad, but really good, but really, really bad to do. Swamps, playing 2 swamps. You gotta have swamps. And I'm playing a single forest. That's pretty much all for the main. Um, if you guys have any questions about the main, the numbers for all of this are pretty cookie cutter if you go to look at any deck list. I'll probably throw up a deck list for this in the comment or in the description. But let me switch over and I'll pull up the sideboard. We'll go through what I'm using for a sideboard. But it's just a good deck. Alright, we're back with the sideboard. I'm not going to say this is the 15 that you should use or that I always use. These are just some of the cards that are in my sideboard sometimes, because my sideboards, I think of it like a 25 board. It's the 15 I'm playing that day, but there's like the 25 that I could play. But these are just some of them, and they're in various numbers. But generally, there's always at least one Ancient Grudge in my sideboard. I don't go to, I haven't, but I guess I could. Nothing really says that you shouldn't, but it's a really, really great card. Just to be able to get that 2-for-1, basically for 3 mana to be able to destroy 3 artifacts, comes up when it's really great against, this is more for affinity than anything else I can really think of. I have brought it in once before against Grixis that was playing Pia and Kira Nalar, if I'm pronouncing that correct. Just to be able to take care of those tokens and not have to worry about, them being chump blockers or whatnot. But that's probably not the greatest play, but I did it. And there's some other little matchups out there. It's okay against Tron, because you can kill Wormcoil, but then it leaves behind 2 little bastards that you have to deal with. But in cases like that, it's really more of an affinity thing. Damnation. I'm playing 1 Damnation in the side. And that's pretty standard. That's normally in there just to be able to clear fields. It can't be regenerated. Just that board wipe. It's just, it's Damnation. Why wouldn't you have 1 in the sideboard? Next up is Duress. Some of the matchups where I really want that little bit of extra burn. It's one of those cards that comes in against burn. Just to be able to, it's almost like a game 3 life against burn a lot of the times. So, it's in there for all the matches where you really, like the control matches where you want another Duress, or you want another Thoughtseize-like effect, to be able to try to push something through. Next is Feed the Clan. Sometimes I have 1, sometimes I have 2, and it's the 5 can save you from losing the game. The 10, against burn, but the 10 can basically say you win. I brought it in against, mostly against burn. I did bring it against Storm because I don't know. Before, and it's probably not the best play, but I was like, I want to be ahead on life where he can't storm me out really, really early, and that was okay. It set him back a turn when the one time I actually played it, but yeah, it's really mostly there for that burn matchup, which is okay. I don't think it's as bad as some people think it is, or some burn players think it is, how good it is for them. But, it's there. Fulminator Mage. Fulminator Mage is one of those love-hate cards for me. I love it because that land destruction plus the body, plus the synergy with Kolaghan's command where you can reoccur him, is really good. I hate him because Tron is such a bad matchup, and I think he just reminds me of that. And you can play 4 of these and crumble to dust and everything else in your sideboard, and they can. It Tron's just just doesn't care sometimes. Sometimes it's enough just to be able to squeak by. I'm only playing 2, because I just Tron is such a bad matchup that I gear my sideboard closer to beating everything else than I do for just for the other matchups. But I'll bring in like Fulminators against Affinity, just to be able to kill manlands, to kill and which is one of the issues with playing Abrupt Decay is you can't kill the manlands. The Fulminator Mage does that, and I'll bring in Fulminator Mage against Affinity, and I'll board out like most of my discard because they're really bad. Like you can get something, and it's maybe not always the best matchup or the best idea. And I'll board out like Liliana's because her +1's really bad and her -2 is really bad against Divinity, and I'll bring in like Fulminator Mages and stuff. Next up is Kitchen Finks. Kitchen Finks is okay against Burn, but it's where it really shines is like the Jund Mir match or the Grixis match, where it has 2 bodies for the most part. It's also really good against some of the aggro matches. Just as something that can block twice, gains you a little life, and it is a legitimate threat. As a 3/2, that 3/2 body is a legitimate threat, and something that just doesn't die. It has that extra body that can come back. It's just really good. And his persist gets around Abrupt Decays, can't regenerate. So it's just one of those cards. And I play 2 myself, because it's just really good in those really grindy matchups where lightning bolts and Abrupt Decay, or like Abrupt Decays or Terminates or any of that's involved, including just making them a big chump blocker. Those are the matches where I really bring him in, and I think he really shines. Nile Spellbomb. I'm playing 2. And sometimes it's out, sometimes it's up, or sometimes it's down 1, sometimes. But Nile Spellbomb is really good to exile target player's graveyard, leaves yours behind, so your Tasigur is still there. But it does cycle. I think that's the big thing for it is you can play it and cycle it and draw a card and still get some kind of value or effect out of it. There are times, because I play 2, that it's kind of sideboard consuming, but I want to play Leyline of the Void just because I think the Grixis match is that bad sometimes. It feels, their graveyard's just such a resource to them in that matchup. And I'm probably a little bitter. I did lose twice against Grixis yesterday, and it was some close matches. But they just ground me out from graveyard. But it is what it is. It happens. But I have a winning record against Grixis overall. But sometimes I really feel like I should be playing Leyline of the Void in the side, and I see some other people doing it. But it's not. Leyline of the Void isn't great if you don't get it, and Leyline of the Void doesn't exile the graveyard if it's already down there. It just anything is put into the graveyard. So late game, it's not very great. Let's go ahead and go to the next card. Shatterstorm. Shatterstorm it's just the affinity trump card. Just to destroy all artifacts. You really can't say much about it. I despise affinity, and I think it's more like I don't like. It's weird for me. I played affinity when it was in Type 2. I played Somber Hover Guards. I remember playing affinity with Skull Clamp before, during the 3 months before it was banned. From print to banning. you know, and I played Disciples, all of that, and it was such a fun deck in Standard, and it was, you know, that's just it's a whole nother story. But with, I don't know, I despise Affinity now just because, I don't know, maybe it's a nostalgia that I don't feel that other people have experienced it like I have, and maybe I'm a little salty because I just see them like, oh, robots. I'm like, yeah, I'll stab you. Anyways, but Shatterstorm, you know, it's pretty obvious. Golgari Charm is, I guess that's one of my spicy techs that I really like. Golgari Charm is a 2-mana board wipe sometimes. Destroying enchantments is awesome. Even regeneration comes into play sometimes. It has 3 legitimate effects. And where this card really comes in is I bring it against elves. I bring it in against elves. I bring it in against hate bearers. Because a lot of the hate bearers are actually like 2/1s and 3/1s and whatnot. But I bring it against that. I bring it against Affinity. A lot of times I have gotten Affinity like a 4-for-1 on this. And I also wiped out the Convoke Rally the Ancestors one, whatever it is, the Convoke one, that deck. I've torn decks up with that. Just that -1 for instant speed, and you can really force that 2 and 3 and 4 and more for 1, where you wipe a board, and it pushes that advantage. And for 2 in an instant, I play 1, and I couldn't imagine not playing it. Next up is kind of one of those cards I don't always play, but I played 1, just to try to get around it's really for Tron, but I don't always play it. It's a lot of Tron matchups just to be able to destroy that land. It's a Sowing Salt for, you know, just 1 red, easier to splash. But with the whole Tron thing, a lot of Trons are playing Thragtusk now, because they can get to that 5 mana, and Thragtusk is still a pain to deal with because it really is a 3-for-1, because, you know, they're gonna get their 5 life, and then they're gonna get their 3/3, and, you know, they still have that 5/3 body, and it's just a pain to deal with all of that. And a lot of Tron players have picked up on that, and they can play it off that 1 green. So it's one of those things I'm not always playing, but sometimes I do. And it's generally just like a 1-of. Anger the Gods, it's off and on for me sometimes. Anger is just, it's really good, and it gets around a lot of things. It gets around any dying triggers from things like Voice of Resurgence, because they're exiled, and they don't go to the graveyard, and dying is a keyword effect for when a card goes to the graveyard from play, or when a creature goes to the graveyard from play. So it gets around a lot of those things, keeps crap out of their sideboard, or out of their graveyard, I mean. But just a 3-mana board wipe that gets a lot of things. Sometimes it's in there, sometimes it's not. Just depends on what I feel is going to be out there. Recently it hasn't, because I haven't been seeing a lot of Affinity, and maybe that's just a regional thing for me, because I seen, out of everyone at States, I think there may have been 2 Affinity decks there, and one was a friend of mine. So yeah, I pulled it from the side, but it's always on standby to go back in. Next is my favorite card. This is, if I take anything and keep it in my sideboard, it is Thrun. Thrun is a boss. I play Thrun inside, and I placed 2nd at States this year, or this last season, and Thrun got me there. I think I sideboarded him in the total of 10 rounds that I played that day. I think I sideboarded him in 7 times, and every time he came into play, I just won. Like, it was, I played against Tarmo Twin, and I brought in Thrun, and it doesn't, it might not seem like it's great, but he can't be countered. He's got that regenerate, so he stared down a Goyf that was big enough to kill him every, like, I don't know how many turns. So it was just coming out really clunky for me, but I was able to land Thrun, and there's nothing he can do about it. And I was keeping up mana, and he just tearing things up. He did work against Grixis. Like, there's nothing he can do against that. I think I played Grixis that day 3 times, and he's that card, and I bring him in against all the control matchups because he's such a good card. If you don't have a Thrun, I would get a Thrun. I ordered a foil Thrun after States, just because of how well it did. And it's just that control grinding matchup card. It's that 4-drop that he does work. I couldn't imagine a better card. That's kind of it for like the main cards that I keep to the side. I have a whole bunch of other, crap kind of set aside in some numbers, but this is kind of like a wishy-washy sideboard. I'm sorry I don't have anything more solid for you to look at or, Google at or something, but it's the only other card I can think of is I played around with the idea. I played like a Chandra and Pyromaster, and she's another one, and I don't have a picture up for her. I should, but I've curved out with Chandra multiple times where it's like turn 1. I Thoughtseize away like the removal, turn 2 Bob, turn 3 or Dark Confidant, turn 3 Liliana, then turn 4 Chandra, and like there's been a couple games where it was like I would draw my extra card off Bob, I would draw a card, I would exile a card with Chandra, I would make everyone discard a card, and then it's a super soft lock. But I was drawing or having 3 cards a turn, plus limiting him by a card, and I was setting with a full grip, and he was just so far behind. It's just, not that it ever always happens like that, or really happens like that a lot, or ever, but it's just one of those things that happen, and she's really great for those grinding matchups. And another card I've played around with, and I'm not sure, is Dreadbore. I played around with Dreadboard on the side, and Dreadboard was kind of my not as good as Maelstrom Pulse, but it cost 1 less. So on some of the matchups, just to be able to deal with Planeswalk was a little easier on my mana than being a 3-drop. I was playing a Dreadbore. So like if they got that flip Jace, I could Dreadbore Jace on like turn 4, and I could still play a threat, and that was kind of my ideas with that, along with like it kills Karn and things like that. And if they go like turn 3 Tron and then they exile my land or something, Dreadbore gives me a little more game there. But it's something I played around with. But that's pretty much it for Jund. If you guys have any questions